Hey, Neil, thank you for coming in. I mean, you've got an amazing, outstanding background of leadership, impact, innovation, um, really being a thought leader, a servant leader, and definitely contributing in profound ways across so many different ecosystems. So thank you for coming in. And I know you've got many deep insights you can share with our audience.
Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate you inviting me. It's an honor.
So, Neil, I'm always curious when I have somebody of your stature and your accomplishment, and yet a leader with purpose. What were the inflection points in your life that created this wonderful person you are today and you're continued to be? And it could have been something when you were 3 or 5 years old, or 10, inside, outside the family, inside, outside of school, early mentors, etc. What were those pivotal moments that really shaped you to who you are?
I attribute a lot about myself to my dad. My dad was just a loving and caring individual. He loved all people. He had a business in Jamaica, New York. We grew up in New York City. And everybody that worked for my dad was Black, but they were family. And my dad was taught me that everybody should be family, no matter what color they were. And on our holidays, I'm Jewish, on Rosh Hashanah and Passover, everybody that worked for my dad sat at our table and had dinner with the family. And on Christmas and Easter, my dad made sure that everybody had food on their plate. And it was my dad who really taught me to care about people, to hopefully not see color, and make sure everybody has an equal opportunity to achieve and to have good health. Um, I've had a lot of things that from that point, what my dad taught me. Back in 2000, I actually did weight management in the African American churches under the Obama administration. And it was an incredible opportunity for me to give back. Um, it was interesting. Going to the churches, I was embraced because nobody really came and offered an opportunity for people to get their health under control. And so it was just an incredible thing for me. And frankly, I helped thousands of people get off of metformin. I actually partnered, by the way, with a Black pastor here in Los Angeles. And so it was really just an incredible experience. I worked primarily actually in the states of Tennessee and Kentucky for the first woman to become a bishop in the Black churches, the AME churches, which is a lady by the name of Vashti McKenzie. And it was extremely fulfilling for me. As I wandered in my career path, if I could say that to you, I eventually developed a company, which we're going to talk about, called BodiMetrics, which is a 10-year-old company. And about 6 years ago, I had the good fortune of being introduced to Dr. Meir Krieger, who teaches at Yale University, who is called the father of sleep. He's the first man to diagnose sleep apnea. And his book for the last 35 years on pulmonary and sleep science has been read by every student in every medical school throughout the world. And when I knew that Meir was potentially going to come on board, I was very excited, frankly, a little bit overwhelmed by it. But I sensed a real entrepreneurial spirit in Meir. And my partners in China are not a factory. It's actually what I would call a think tank, a group of phenomenal doctors and engineers. And their concern, frankly, is only to help people. By the way, just to let you know, I've been traveling to China and to Asia since 1972. And the Chinese are very much a part of my life. I love the Chinese people. They're great people, and I'm in great pain with what's going on now between our countries. Anyway, long story short is Meir got on the Zoom conference with the doctors and engineers and brought something to light to me which I didn't know about. My device monitors blood oxygen, but Meir made me aware for the last 40 years, there's been a problem which is known as the pigmentation issue. And that is that people of color that have melanin in their skin, from Chinese to black, do not get the correct numbers on their blood oxygen. It caused the death of hundreds of thousands of people during the COVID crisis rather. And additionally, today, as we're speaking, nothing has really been done about it. And I've really been fighting that fight. It's my passion, based on going all the way back to my dad, to make sure that people have a device like my Circle Ring so that everybody can get correct healthcare information about themselves.
So that's a really fascinating background, and I can see how your father, your family, really helped shape your inclusive, diverse point of view. What of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and
Yes.
support and impact. And I mean, and because your family was entrepreneurial, then you studied business at the University of Cincinnati. So now I can see sort of the connection.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and then in your career, you've been in the apparel business. I mean, you've been in many different areas, franchises to technology, and you've raised money for the City of Hope program. In fact, you founded the Garden of Hope. So I can see all of these things together with working with the people of color, and I'm a person of color, and addressing some of the challenges that are not widely supported, and yet you've been working on making sure that there is this broad support of all people. Before we get into BodiMetrics, can you tell me a little bit about some of the lessons you learned across all of these milestones in your career, founding companies, chairing them, and so on?
Well, it's a continuation of what my dad taught me. I try to be fair to all my workers, give them the opportunity to be successful, and make sure their families are okay. So no matter what I did, as you mentioned, I was in the textile industry, I was in the toxic waste industry, I was in the ice cream business, I was in the working for the City of Hope, and I've been blessed, okay, and I think also the exposure that I had in traveling all over the world at a very early age really taught me about people, right, and that everybody is the same, okay, and again, just trying to help everybody throughout the world.
So now you got this BodiMetrics, and you got something that can properly monitor O2 levels and things like that, right? So
Yes, I do.
the first change in monitoring blood pressure, continuous blood pressure flows, but the
Right.
oxygenation that's occurring in the blood and so on. And so, and then you got FDA clearance as well, right? Recently.
Correct. Yeah. So let me speak to that a little bit, if I may. And then where we are today. Our ring, which we call the Circle Ring, and we have different iterations of it. We actually got what I would call a landmark clearance in August of 23 by the FDA. And the reason why it was landmark is I really want to go back and tell you about the terrain of the wearable world, if I can call it to you that way. Okay.
Right.
Because it's the enormity of the business is incredible, and the scale of it. And frankly, it's exponentially growing every year, because this is going to be the methodology of how we monitor people. Now, I separate the wearable world. First of all, I don't like the word wearable. I think it's inappropriately named. It should be called sensors. But I say there's two different groups. There's what I call the healthy group and the health group. And there's nothing wrong with either group. Okay. The healthy group would be the individuals, let's say, that have an Oura ring or a Fitbit watch or an Apple watch, right? And they have bought these products because they want to get some idea about themselves. They want to essentially be, you might say in a way, a part of a club or be hip, if I can say it to you that way. And they're really not concerned with medical accuracy. I'm in the healthy side of the area where I really am concerned about medical metrics. And it's important just to give you a differentiation. We take a blood oxygen reading, what is known as 1/100 hertz, or 100 measurements per second. An Oura Ring takes a measurement every 15 minutes. So it's really apples and oranges. And I think you can understand that doctors will not diagnose off of the healthy devices because they're really not monitoring at the right rate. Additionally, this gives me a good segue to get you back to my FDA clearance, is that three things happen in our FDA clearance, which is very, very important to differentiate these two different sections. One was the FDA cited our form factor of our ring. Our ring is really not like a ring, it's more like a nut. And it has two vertical drop downs that expand and contract. And by expanding and contracting, it stabilizes the sensor on the finger. And what the FDA said was, first they spoke about our form factor, about the ergonomics of our form factor, which is patented, by the way. Then they spoke about the aspect of the stabilization of the sensor. And that's really, to me, one of the most important things, because what they said was by stabilizing the sensor, you get medical metrics. Well, on all those healthy devices that I described, they move. So they really don't get medical metrics because their sensors are moving. So if you want to get medical metrics, as the FDA cited in their definition now, there's finally a definition of medical metrics in the stabilization of the sensor. And the last thing that the FDA cited in our clearance was that we have the sensors on the palm side or the belly of the hand. And by having it on the belly of the hand rather than the pigmented side of the hand, we don't have a pigmentation issue. So that really is the differentiator between us, you might say, between the healthy and health devices. And that the key to sensors, as I mentioned, is the stabilization of the sensor.
So your sensor then, can you tell me precisely what it measures then?
Sure. We have different iterations, as I've mentioned to you. Okay. So the Circle Pro, which is our FDA approved, cleared device is the right word, is continuous blood oxygen and continuous heart rate. By the way, the word continuous is a very, very important thing in medicine. You know, episodic measurements or one-time measurements, frankly, are worthless to a doctor, right? I'll draw the example of blood pressure or getting on this, or blood pressure is really the best example. You could take blood pressure at 8 o'clock in the morning, and let's say you're 120/80, and then you drank 3 cups of coffee and somebody's bothering you, and all of a sudden you're 160/120, So that's the need to really see that continuous monitoring. And that continuous monitoring goes in all aspects of metric monitoring measurements. So we do continuous blood oxygen and continuous heart rate in the Circle Pro. We also have the Circle Plus ring, which is the same form factor, which is registered rather than cleared with the FDA. And that does continuous blood oxygen, continuous heart rate, continuous finger temperature, continuous heart rate variability. And on the outside of it, we have an ECG sensor and blood pressure device. Okay, and then our last device that I'd like to speak about, which is the evolution, and I'll tell that story about the Circle VS. And the Circle VS takes our ring, the Circle Pro ring, and combines it with an FDA-cleared watch that actually has a blood pressure bladder in it. And for the first time in 120 years, we've changed how blood pressure is measured.
So to use any of these devices, so one requires the watch, right?
Yes.
Can the other ones work with a smartphone or?
Yeah, they all work, by the way. First of all the data from the devices each one of them goes to an app. And then the data flows directly to a cloud, right? People can see their information in our cloud. Or for example, if it's, let's use Kaiser Permanente as an example, we could send the information directly from the app to Kaiser Permanente's electronic medical record system. So we have the opportunity different ways that people can see their information, and doctors.
So are you a B2B play then? So you're working with, or are you B2C or a combination, or are you business to business or business to consumer, or what's your sort of?
Well, there's a lot of things going on here. Okay. So first of all, when we started BodiMetrics, we decided that we didn't really want to be B2C. We wanted to be B2B, or to the healthcare community. So we got involved with academia, insurance companies, in developing our products and verifying that they work properly. Okay. I'm going to talk later in this conversation how we are going to eventually become B2C, if I could say that to you. But right now, our focus is B2B primarily. And our key customers right now are the United States government, the VA and the DOD, Kaiser Permanente, and then we do an enormous amount of research work with academia.
I mean, I'm just thinking of people who could actually use, I mean, companies, I can definitely see how companies could use who are in the medical population health space, or segments of it could definitely use what you're doing.
Exactly.
I mean, I can see how consumers would be interested as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So let me jump ahead a little bit, if I may, if that's okay if you're right. So we've developed a new device, and it's called the Circle VS. And as I mentioned, it's a combination of the Circle Pro FDA cleared ring and one of only 2 FDA cleared watches that have blood pressure bladders in the world. And what ends up happening is that we combine the ring and the watch. They work in tandem with each other. The first thing to really understand is that cardiovascular disease and hypertension are the #1 killers worldwide.
Right.
Okay. And then, despite 100 years of spot-based blood pressure measurements, blood pressure has not been controlled properly. Also, I want you to be aware that most people die during the night. Okay. Usually between the hours of 3 to 5. Okay. And most heart attacks and strokes do happen during the night. This Circle VS is a personal patient server for continuous blood pressure and SpO2 monitoring, will change cardiovascular disease monitoring. What we do is we have seen that if you're in, there are different stages of sleep. And if you're in your REM sleep, where let's say your normal blood pressure is 120/80, in REM typically would drop, let's say, to 100/70, if I can use that as an example. As I mentioned to you early in the conversation, we take a measurement at 100 hertz, so it's 100 measurements per second, and in the medical world, they call it beat to beat. Well, if you're sleeping and we see all of a sudden a spike in that 100 measurements we take per second, and your blood pressure goes to 180, let's say, or your systolic goes to 180 or 200, we basically know that you're predisposed to a heart attack or a stroke. Because what has happened is, you might say a sledgehammer is hit into your heart and dislodged some plaque. And eventually, not that moment, but eventually, you're going to have to deal with that. And it ends up happening that this spike affects all areas of medicine. If I can jump a little bit to an area going back to my childhood and my dad and my concern of people of color, one of the areas that we're going to be using the Circle VS in is preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is a disease which today has really reached epidemic levels throughout the world. It's gotten an enormous amount of press because of the Black community. Preeclampsia is where a woman who's in her approximately 20th week of pregnancy all of a sudden develops an acute level of hypertension. And unfortunately, both the fetus and the mom are at serious risk potentially of dying. Baby may have to be aborted, or consequences post-delivery of the child. So as I said to you, we can see things before they happen. So in the area of preeclampsia, we believe that we're going to be able to see in the first or second week if the lady who is pregnant is predisposed to preeclampsia. So really what I'm saying to you, and people are calling the Circle VS the Holy Grail, is that we now can be predictive of problems before they happen. And we can take preventative measures in all areas of medicine to stop it before it happens.
So currently, all of the different products you have are available not to consumers, but to uh, medical communities.
Correct.
Insurance companies are working with medical communities and things like that, right?
Yes.
And then the VS, which will be out maybe next year, is your B2C, where a consumer could actually order one from you.
Well, that's where you that's why when you said to me B2C, I was going to talk to you a little about that. The reality is unfortunately, we all ran out about 40 years ago when we all got concerned about hypertension and bought blood pressure devices. Unfortunately, they really don't work accurately. Okay. And we believe that we give the most accurate measurement today. By the way, the FDA only says an accurate blood pressure measurement is when two doctors are standing by you with stethoscopes, listening to your blood pressure, that you get an actual correct measurement. We actually create in our own way that same way of the doctors looking at you through using our ring and our watch. And we are able to get systolic blood pressure that is extremely accurate, if not the most accurate in the world today.
I mean, that sounds really interesting. When will it be available?
Well, so just to let you know, we're going into clinical trials now. And our first clinical, few different things. Number one, we're working at Yale University, and we're getting into an IRB at Yale University, which is going to, there's a process that is used when you're in surgery, which is called arterial blood gases, which is a very, very uncomfortable process and potentially causes problems for individuals. And Yale University is going to use our Circle VS against the arterial blood gases to see if we can replace that, which would be incredible. At the same time, in 6 weeks, we're starting a trial in a clinic in Chicago, a Black clinic, if I can say it to you that way. And we will be measuring 30 women who are just become pregnant, and to see if we can see if they are predisposed to preeclampsia before it happens. Additionally, one of the other areas that we're working with a professor at Harvard. I collaborated with an incredible man by the name of Dr. Ehud Baran, who is a Israeli cardiovascular doctor, was educated in Israel in cardiovascular, and also is a single processor engineer who was educated at the Technion, which is the foremost school in Israel, and additionally taught there. Dr. Baran and I collaborated in making the Circle VS, and we're quite excited about what we're going to deliver to the world. And what I was going to say also was that Dr. Baran believes that we will be able to see dementia before it happens. Okay, because basically the blood flow to the brain is not occurring when those spikes are happening.
So you got these being used in sort of in the operating theater. You got these being used in a clinic on this clinical trial basis, and so that'll take a bit of time. Let's say 3 years hence, or 2 years, you're finished this sort of process, then it'll be available through X. What is X?
It'll be available we hope to bring it to the consumer marketplace, is really what we're trying to do. And right. Following a little bit of the model that Dexcom has actually just launched also into the consumer marketplace, which is a brilliant model, which is really an educational model. And that's one thing that I've also was taught at a very, very young age, that education is key. And so we're hoping to bring the Circle VS as a new way for all of us to monitor our blood pressure and our blood oxygen and educate people about hypertension and the impact of it.
Yeah, I mean, your existing products are really B2B, so pricing, price points are not so much a concern. But once you get into consumers, the price points are a concern.
Correct.
Do you have an estimate what that price point will be on a
So
retail?
what we're going to do is we're going to do it on a monthly basis, similar to Dexcom,
Right.
so that you'll buy a ring, maybe initially, a Circle VS. Initially, you might say we anticipate it'll cost between $89 to $99, and then you'll pay a monthly charge for it. We're not sure yet what that charge will be.
Right. So that's interesting. You'll have a vibrant B2B marketplace, and you have a vibrant B2C marketplace. I could see the B2C actually being quite big.
I do too. I think it, frankly, again, they're terrible diseases, but when, needless to say, when you think of the amount of people that have diabetes and you think about the amount of people that have hypertension, it's much higher in the hypertension area, if I could say it to you that way.
So we've done a great sort of discussion of what you're doing as co-founder and CEO of BodiMetrics, and you're definitely in this, monitoring business, kind of the sensing business.
Yes. And the PACT Act was the largest act signed ever by our federal government. And it's in regards to men and women who served there. When we went into the fields of battle in Iraq and Afghanistan, we cleared out approximately, if I can say, 200 yards vertically and horizontally, and we burned our garbage there. And unfortunately, we were supposed to separate our garbage, and we didn't. So that all the men and women that served in those fields of battle now have pulmonary problems, and a lot of it has already metastasized into cancer. Our Circle ring is being used by the DOD and VA to screen our veterans to see if they have pulmonary problems from serving abroad. But what it really speaks to is the efficacy of our ring as far as blood oxygen. And now this takes me to my next passion. And my next passion is my concern about emergencies, both man-made and natural. Okay? Man-made being, for example, the train that rolled in Palestine, Ohio, a year and a half ago, right? And our EPA, federal and state come in, they put the train back on the tracks, they supposedly clean the groundwater, and off they go. But they forgot about one thing, the people. And if we had put a ring on those individuals when that train initially rolled and all those gases got out, we could be identifying what problems these people are eventually going to have. Of course, we remember back 30, 40 years ago, Love Canal and the city had to be closed down in upstate New York. The same thing's going to happen in Palestine, Ohio. So what I'm saying is that we should really use the ring as a monitoring device when there's an emergency so that we can keep track of people. Same thing, for example, our firefighters here in the state of California where I live. They should be wearing a ring, as should the people in the surrounding areas, so that we can identify a problem that potentially happens to them ahead of time. My whole thrust now is being preventive.
Right, and then the proliferation of your technology has a preventative mechanism, but also predictive as well, right? Of
Exactly right.
Problems. And because you're monitoring it at such a high rate, then it gives you this kind of data granularity that doesn't exist through other systems. And because you can upload it into the cloud and things like that, it provides this universal capability. So I could see the benefits of all that. So let's switch a little bit in the final moments of our interview.
Sure.
So you've been in business a long time and you're still doing a startup. What is your family think? Because a startup is not easy, right?
Well, it's not easy. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm essentially a serial entrepreneur. And when you do that, that's called high risk. And frankly, BodiMetrics, I started it 10 years ago and I still haven't taken an income from it.
So what is your, so because you're a serial entrepreneur, very successful, and I've got budding entrepreneurs in my audience. So what's the recommendation for somebody who says, I want to be an entrepreneur and do a startup? Give me, the top.
The biggest thing I can tell somebody is it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to take a lot more money. So nothing happens when it's supposed to happen. And the estimates of the cost of the startup are way under.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the technology IT field for a long time, and I always smile when some consultant comes in and gives some estimate, because I know it's probably going to be double. It's going to take twice as long, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I guess there's other things like you have to have perseverance.
Of course.
Well, there's volatility.
It's interesting you say this. Two young men came up to me. I went to a meeting about 10 days ago, and they said, "What can you tell us, and how to help us in the future?" I said, tenacity.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, you can't stop. I said the world has put in everything to stop you. You can't let those barriers stop you. I said, I keep on calling people until they say, get away. And if you don't do that, it's out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, in fact, a friend of mine says that a no is a yes with conditions.
There you go.
There's never a no. It's actually a yes. You just have to figure out what the conditions are, right? So
sure, absolutely.
And I can see all of the elements of this kind of Angela Duckworth idea of grit, right? And I saw this article kind of break it down into a formula. You got some talent, you work really hard, you get skills. So then you get those skills, but you got to work really hard and be resilient, and you get achievements, but that's not enough.
Right.
You take those achievements and you have to be resilient, and you have to be versatile and agile and optimistic and persevering, and then you'll get success.
Right. Exactly. So that, to me, tenacity is the key word.
Yeah. And I would say you're probably endlessly curious as well, because everything you're doing shows a lot of curiosity, right? Yes. Running experiments all the time and forming relationships. You mentioned, I think earlier, this idea about relationships, but relationships being key as well, right? So building relationships.
Yes. Exactly.
And trust. So you got this marvelous career. So you gave some tips to the audience who are entrepreneurial. Your career is kind of very YPO, like a young president. Are you a YPOer or anything like that?
No, I'm not. Many friends that are.
Yeah, or there's this other organization called EO, Entrepreneur Organization. So you very fit the model. Okay, this is the very last question. Then,
Sure.
What are your final recommendations and or questions you want to leave the audience?
My final suggestions to everybody is to make sure they're getting proper health care, and to realize that there are tools available to them now. I believe self-monitoring is the future, right? So that if I'm an individual, I would suggest to everybody to find the right self-monitoring tools, and then to educate themselves to understand what those tools are saying. Just to have the numbers is meaningless. You have to educate yourself to understand them. And once you understand them, then you can decide who you want to share them with and how to take care of a problem that you potentially have before it happens.
Wow, that's very good advice. So, Neil, thank you for coming in, and you shared great insights with our audience, and you have a marvelous career of success, and it's continuing. So,
thank you, sir.
Thank you for really embodying your wisdom and throughout the conversation, which will benefit everybody.
I hope so. You take care. Pleasure to see you.
Okay. Nice to see you as well.
Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the brand called You Videocast and Podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.